think so. Oh, yeah. Can't take you anywhere. Oh, and you better go. No, I don't need my glasses for this. Good morning. I'm going to play some music here in a moment. I just wanted to mention in the bulletin, it doesn't tell you the titles, and I'm not going to tell you either. We'll have it be a nice little, some people enjoy guessing, so we'll leave it for now. But I think you'll recognize the songs I play today, and if you don't, we can talk afterwards, if you want. And I will let the audiovisual people know because they put the titles in the YouTube video. Good morning and welcome to Fountain Street Church. Here we go.
Good morning. My name is Katie Mitchell. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm so glad you're here today. I grew up in local Christian Reformed churches, the CRC. Maybe some of you did too, so maybe this will sound a bit familiar. Growing up in the CRC, we went to church every Sunday, twice, and if you were old enough to be out of kindergarten, you were in the sanctuary for the entire service. And you were quiet, and you sang along, and you did all the things. Being in church was so important for everyone that a friend and I were recently recalling how we had cry rooms, which were a little closed-off room, maybe off to the side of the balcony, with a big window so that parents could be at church, even if they had screaming, crying infants. There were intercoms in the nurseries. You had to be part of the service. And that's what I grew up with. Fountain Street is very different in many ways. A lot of us are here in the sanctuary. People are watching on YouTube, but people might also be up on the second floor with kids who are out of kindergarten, or in the social hall, or wandering somewhere in between. And that's okay, because we're here to experience church the way we want to experience church. And I think that's an amazing thing. It's one of the things I really love about Fountain Street, but it might also be one of our challenges. As a parent, I love not necessarily having to be in the sanctuary at 11. It's helpful. I can be a little scatterbrained on Sunday mornings. It's nice that I don't have to be in that seat. But at the same time, it's a challenge. We're never all in the same room at the same time, literally or figuratively. Lots of churches have challenges like Fountain Street. All churches have similar challenges, but Fountain Street has unique challenges. The one I said is just one example. And while challenges aren't easy, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that we have specific challenges here. I think we should. That's what makes us Fountain Street. And I don't have any big solutions to share. It's just something to think about, our unique challenges, especially as we have our congregational workshop tomorrow, for which there's still time to sign up. I highly encourage it. You can be here, present at the church, or participate on Zoom. But just something to think about as we talk about where we are and where we're going to go as a church. So, in that spirit of wandering congregants, welcome to Fountain Street Church. Whether you're here in the sanctuary, or up on the second floor with the kids, or watching on YouTube today or sometime in the future, or if you are in the narthex, or if you're wandering somewhere in between, welcome. No matter what you believe, or if you believe nothing at all, no matter how you identify, who you love or who loves you, whether you've been here your entire life or this is your first Sunday, welcome to Fountain Street Church. You belong here.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Christopher Rowe. I use he, him pronouns, and I have the honor and the pleasure and the responsibility of serving as this church's acting senior minister. But this morning, maybe more importantly, I'm here before you because I valiantly survived election week. It feels good, regardless of your political affiliation or your hopes and dreams or fears from this past week, to have gone through another election cycle. I set it up here many times. It can be stressful and tenuous. It can bring out stressed relationships between loved ones or neighbors or coworkers and friends. And yet there is also so much hope and growth and truth that comes in those spaces, in those places, and of course, beyond the election. It feels good to be here this morning nonetheless. As our invitation to worship this morning, I want to invite you into a special space. We have a very full service today and an even more full afternoon following this service. It feels good, but it can be a little overwhelming, and so I want to make sure we're grounded. We have a lot of people here this morning from Together West Michigan, both from our Fountain Street representatives as well as from the organization community-wide. It's a special morning to hear from them, and we have a lot of other things we're going to be inviting you to this afternoon, and so I want you to breathe with me. Breathe after a long week. Breathe on this first snowfall in West Michigan. Breathe as we prepare for worship. And as we prepare our hearts and our bodies and our beings for worship, I invite you to hear this invitation for us brought to us by Maya Angelou's poem On the Pulse of the Morning, written for a special inauguration many years ago. Hear these words of encouragement and inspiration and invitation. Lift upon your eyes this day, breaking for you. Give birth again, my friends, to the dream. Women, children, men, take it into the palms of your hands. Mold it into the shape of your most private needs. Sculpt it into the image of your most public selves. Lift up your hearts. Each new hour holds new chances for a new beginning. Do not be wedded to forever, to fear, yoked eternally to brutalness. The horizon itself leans forward, offering you a space of a new place, a place in which the steps of change are before you. Here on the pulse of this fine day, you may have the courage to look up and out upon me, upon the rock, upon the river, the tree, your country, no less Midas than the mendicant, no less you now than the mastodon then. Here on the pulse of this fine new day, you may have the grace to look up and look out and into your sister's eyes and into your brother's face, your country, and say simply, very simply, with hope, good morning. Welcome to worship. Our ancient witness this morning comes to us from Rumi's poem, The Guest House, translated by Coleman Barks. Hear what the ancient spirit is saying to this contemporary soul we share this morning. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a messiness, and a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door, laughing, and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide to you from beyond. This morning's contemporary witness comes to us from Christine McDougall's poem, Liminal. Hear what the contemporary spirit is saying to this beloved community this morning. Liminal. On the threshold, the space between, where the questions tug, and the next step is not yet formed, but it is forming. It is a place for holding, being, seeking. It is a place for holding yet again and being yet again and seeking once more. Urgency here is forbidden. The liminal space has its own gestation and requires patience, dreaming, and conversation. Intimate, loving conversation with the self, the world, and with others to nurture a maturing of community. So relax, breathe. Sooner or later, the next page will be turned and all will be revealed in its time. In its time. Thank you so much, choir. As I alluded to earlier, we have a whole host of guests into our pulpit this morning, and this is one of my favorite ways to do worship here, when we magnify voices that we don't often hear from, and we also get to hear a little bit more about things that are actually happening within the walls of this church, in the walls of other communities of faith and nonprofits, and things that are happening beyond any walls that can contain the human spirit and endeavor. It is good to have you here this morning, and I'm looking forward to it. As we prepare for their message, I would like to have a little bit of an entree into it by doing a bit of an imaginative exercise. So just picture for a moment 2 people, not a group or a small group of people meeting up, but just 2 people inside a coffee shop, and they're talking. Maybe they've known one another for a lifetime or known each other in this church for decades, or it's just somebody they've been interested, but there's 2 of them in a coffee shop, and they are discovering things about one another. They're nodding, they're laughing, they're connecting, and they're being moved. Imagine 6 people coming together, sitting in a circle after church right here or online, and they're listening to one another. Again, maybe they've known each other for a lifetime or for decades in this church, or this is their first time overlapping, and they're sharing stories. Maybe they're tearing up. Maybe they're laughing, but they are being moved. Imagine many of these groups re-meeting and re-sharing and re-hearing the same stories and new stories, learning so much about one another, and they are so moved. Imagine speaking and listening and deepening and understanding and being moved by what is happening in many places over many weeks, over many months, in many places, over many spaces, and throughout many communities in West Michigan. Imagine 600 of these stories and these people coming together, sharing what they discovered about one another and themselves. And after being moved by what they had heard and witnessed and experienced, they are now ready themselves to move. This is a broad stroke over what Together West Michigan is. Fountain Street Church is a member of this broad-based organizing group. It's a nonpartisan coalition of churches and nonprofits that have come together to help move things in West Michigan. They're here to affect change and create change, and to be part of co-creating and cultivating a West Michigan in which the fullness of all people and living is actually seen as possible and experienced. And as we well know in this church, those changes actually start as individuals before it moves into the collective whole. We've been talking about that this season. Here in this cathedral of love, in this temple of peace we share, we know firsthand what it takes to say no to something so that we can finally say yes to something else, to make space to say yes to something new and invest in a future together that works for everyone. And I'd like to suggest this morning, as would our speakers, as would many of you who are participating in Together West Michigan, that our commitment in this church to the work of Together West Michigan is a worthy and resounding cause worth saying yes to in our future. This 153-year ministry that we share is rooted in active participation for social justice, right alongside and in tandem with this idea that we are called to cultivate and craft our own spiritual journeys, likely because these 2 realities exist as codependent and interdependent things that rely on one another. Here in this congregation, many of us have participated in the house meetings that took place this past spring, and in response, many of you were at the public launch over at Westminster Church. Many of you signed up to work on the 6 issue teams that we'll hear more about later from Jill Cunningham, and many of you have been involved in other peripheral activities around Together West Michigan in your own ways. Now, part of the responsibility towards this shared work that we are embarking on alongside all of our downtown neighboring churches and nonprofit organizations is paying our dues, quite literally. And you'll hear more about this from our social justice team member, Sharon, in a bit. She's going to share a bit more about that. But the work of Together West Michigan and Fountain Street Church is about a relationship building aspect that'll go into our future. It's about caring about and listening to the people who don't get listened to in West Michigan very often, and that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and capacity. And it needs our support, including our financial support, which you'll hear about soon. But this is a mutually beneficial experience. This is something that helps our church live into its deepest values, its shared history, and its hopes for its future. As we continue to imagine what it truly means to let it begin with we as a congregation and discern the ways in which we want to lift up change and love and peace and justice in West Michigan, let it begin with these individual stories that come together to write the liturgy of life. And what better way to do that than hearing the story Jean Bailey has for us this morning?
When I first put some words to paper about Together West Michigan, Christopher drew my attention to the fact that my story wasn't in it. He said, "Why don't you tell your own story?" Okay, yes, of course. So here it is. It was just about 3 years ago that my friend, Catherine Freericks, asked if we could meet. Her church, St. Mark's, was exploring something called broad-based organizing, and could we sit down and she'd tell me more about it? I said, sure. So we're sitting on my front porch on a tiny little table on a summer afternoon, me expecting some kind of pitch or presentation, but she said to me, "Tell me what you care about." At first I thought to myself, well, Catherine, we've known each other almost 20 years now from the writers group we both belong to. Don't you know me well enough by now to know what I'm passionate about? As it turns out, I didn't know, not really know the full answer to that question until she asked me. A little background first. I had retired from teaching the theater department at Hope College earlier that year, and I was coming to the end of my second term on our governing board here. My husband and I were in the latter stages of finishing up major renovations on the family house up north, and we were beginning the process of moving. Suttons Bay would be our primary residence, but we would keep the small apartment in the house we'd lived in for 40 years up here on Crescent Street, which was also in the middle of rehabbing. Not to mention, we were still in the middle of a pandemic. So, endings, beginnings, middles. The endings were easier to feel coming, but I really couldn't see beginnings yet. It was a big now what? What would these transitions be like? What would they lead to? I can say that the conversation that Catherine and I had led to more conversations and eventually to meeting with many others, often on Zoom, for some months. So I'm learning about our local broad-based organizing effort, we hadn't named ourselves yet, and talking with people from other local churches and organizations that maybe I donated to but otherwise had no connection to. I'm hearing about how other communities across the country had formed themselves and put ordinary organized people power behind some pretty impressive social justice work, addressing issues that those less fortunate around us have to deal with every day. Still, I'm thinking, I'm not really an activist. But I have had experience as an actor. This felt different, and this felt familiar. Meeting in small circles, building community, starting small and thoughtful, being moved and learning from each other, I felt pulled again and again into this relational work, not unlike our connection circles that we've had here at church for a long time. I told the governing board that as I was going off the board, I'd be a willing ambassador to this thing I didn't fully understand yet, but that I could see potential for Fountain Street's involvement. I got encouragement to do so. starting with my conversation with Catherine, which I later learned is called a one-on-one, I began to see that there were a lot of similarities between my life's work as a theater practitioner and teacher of acting and this relational community-building work of what's now called Together West Michigan. I remember telling Catherine, I love helping students discover and embrace their whole selves. I love teaching about the power of ensemble. You can't do theater by yourself. Theater is nothing if not collaborative. It was on every syllabus I ever wrote. Your grade is based not on your individual talent, but on your energy and attitude that contributes to the whole. How to wield that energy? You don't put on character traits, you play an action. Playing in action is using energy toward what you do want, not fighting what you don't want. I always thought activism meant marching in the streets, and I was never confident that I could legitimately wear that social justice badge, but turns out wearing the badge is not the point. It's what I'd been teaching all these years. It's connecting with your fellow humans, awakening to your full humanity by recognizing theirs. And it doesn't end there. You don't fully inhabit a role until you stop wearing the adjective and start embodying the verb. And your job as an actor, it's always about fully committing to the world of the play and telling the story. Like all the arts and sciences, and dare I say it, democracy, it's always been about telling the story. My friend Catherine died earlier this year. Even though her cancer treatments had restricted her activities, she was still meeting virtually with us from time to time. She never got to see us find a name for ourselves, but she was there from the beginning and saw it begin to take shape. In part to honor her, I wanted to see Together West Michigan make it to the public launch this past June, which we did. And it was marvelous. And now what? Now I'm knee-deep in research meetings. I'm on the housing issue team along with a number of you, and so grateful that what started for me, maybe out of a sense of obligation, has become a real sense of purpose. To serve, to give back, yes, all fine values, but what I hadn't counted on was how much I got back. My whole self, re-energized, wholehearted, invested, and beginning again. It's always right in front of us, isn't it? The choice to say yes to something, or as another friend of mine once put it, something big enough to wrap your heart around. Allison McCauley is now going to give us a picture of beginnings for this amazing thing called broad-based organizing.
Good morning. My name is Allison McCauley, and I'm the organizer for Together West Michigan. And Together West Michigan is a member of a national network called the Industrial Areas Foundation, which is the nation's largest and longest-standing network of faith and community groups. And our goal is to be a vehicle for families to have a powerful voice at the tables where decisions are made about their lives. And that is the goal of the Industrial Areas Foundation, or for short, the IAF. And the question that started the IAF was, what if not just individuals, but the institutions where families gather together to interpret life together and share their values came together to act on the pressures that families face? If faith communities and labor unions and nonprofits and neighborhood groups came together, could we build the kind of relational power that's necessary, that ability to act to really get at the pressures our families face in powerful ways? Now, Industrial Areas Foundation is not a terribly sexy or interesting name, So let me tell you the story of where this network and this name came from. 80 years ago, more or less, this network started in the Back of the Yards neighborhood in South Chicago. And if you're familiar with that, that was the area that Upton Sinclair wrote the book The Jungle about, where meatpacking workers worked, where the Hormel factory was based. And this organization, this very first broad-based organization, grew out of the struggles of the families who worked in those factories and lived in those neighborhoods, looking for something more. So they started to wonder about building power across the lines that tend to divide, and started innovating this idea of organizing institutions, not just individuals. And so out of the combination of labor unions, Catholic parishes, and neighborhood organizations, the Back of the Yard Neighborhoods Organization was born. And at their very first public gathering, John L. Lewis of the mine workers, who helped start the CIO, and Archbishop Scheel from the Catholic Archdiocese of Chicago stood on stage together, despite death threats for doing so, in front of 1,000 people, many of whom worked for those meatpacking industries and were on strike, with a banner behind them that said, "We the people will control our own destiny." The next day, Hormel settled the strike with the workers. And talking about crossing lines, one of the very first big funders of the Industrial Areas Foundation was Marshall Fields of the department store fame, who saw what had happened and said, "I would like to give $10,000 to start this kind of organization in other industrial areas so that people can have this kind of power across the country." And that is how the Industrial Areas Foundation, which is no longer a foundation, but a network of organizations across the country, was born. And this has led to an 80-year tradition of regular people learning how to organize and act powerfully together in public life by organizing their institutions across lines that tend to divide and win. There are now over 60 broad-based organizations like Together West Michigan across the country, and including Canada and the UK, including groups like COPS in San Antonio, one of the flagship organizations, who just celebrated 40 years of being in existence and recently moved millions of dollars of ARPA money not into the salaries of administrators or big business, but into job training for the lowest paid workers who were laid off during the pandemic to get good paying jobs after the pandemic. There are COPS leaders who are now grandchildren of the founders who are part of that organization, and folks who are buried with their COPS button because of the impact it made on their lives. I just met with a colleague from Episo in the Valley in South Texas who celebrated 40 years of their existence, and they celebrated bringing water and sewer, just water and sewer, to 100,000 people in the colonias of El Paso, Texas. Central Texas Interfaith was just interviewed by Jon Stewart on national television for their fight against corporate welfare that takes money away from schools and local communities. East Brooklyn Congregations was just interviewed by Ted Koppel for their flagship Nehemiah Homes program that's created $1.5 billion in wealth for first-time homeowners in a blown-out neighborhood of New York City. And I could tell you more and more stories. There are countless job training programs, youth programs, running water, roads, affordable housing, job protections that have come and helped tens of thousands of people, if not more, in the last 80 years. And just 3 weeks ago, a delegation of 20 IAF leaders met with Pope Francis himself in his private residence in Rome for an hour and a half at his request on his time for projects he deems important to learn about the work of the IAF. And I want to share with you one of the things he said. He said, "You constantly use the words to see and to listen, and I'm impressed that none of you started with any theory. No one says, I read a book and that interested me. The danger is when you intellectualize a problem, but it is about amor concreto, love concretely in action. And that's what you do. So Together West Michigan is the very first IAF affiliate in the state of Michigan and one of the newest in this long tradition. As you've heard said, we gathered 600 people in June to kick off publicly, and since then our research teams have held over 60 research actions and are closing in on some key solutions for specific issues. And I'm happy to announce we just had our very first win, where our transportation team met with a city traffic engineer after working with the residents of Hancock Street in the Oakdale neighborhood who are deeply concerned about speeding, so much that they won't let their kids play in their front yard, and requested a traffic study to be done in May when there's actual traffic on the streets to figure out what could be done. And he said yes. I know a traffic study on a street doesn't seem big, but that has never happened. Those residents have never sat down with a traffic engineer from the city, shared their stories, asked for a commitment, and gotten it. And we only go up from here. So today, we're talking about two forms of power that we use to win: organized money and organized people. And many of you saw the beginnings of organized people in that 600-person event in June. And organized money is just as important. I came to this work 13 years ago as a sad and angry ESL teacher, overrun with the issues of my students every day and my friends. And I came out of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, if you can believe that. And in this work, I found voice, I found power, I found change in the world I wanted to see, and change in myself that I never even knew I wanted. And if that's me, who came out of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, Fountain Street, a church with one of the most powerful, longest-standing traditions of justice and social action in Grand Rapids, I can only imagine what you can do with us. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Just opening my notes. My name is Javier Ronquillo. I use he, him pronouns. I am here invited from St. Mark's, just across the street. And I'm here to just share my story about why and how I came to be involved with Together West Michigan. So I think one of the main things was I heard, just like Jean, about Together West Michigan from people in St. Mark's. Catherine, in particular, was one of the people that shared. And I was drawn immediately to this organization. And I think the main reason for that was because I was looking for something like this. In my life, I have had the opportunity to do volunteer work with many organizations. Always, I am a mathematician, and I love sharing mathematics as a way of entering a workspace that pays better, that gives more opportunities. So I was always doing math nights, whatnot, like a lot of things. But I always felt like I was falling short. I always felt like it was just a little Band-Aid for a bigger issue. And when I heard this idea of bringing a lot of people, a lot of organizations, not just one person, 2, 6, together, a light bulb went on, and I was like, oh, yes, this is something that I've been looking for. So I think Reverend Christopher already gave us that image of like thinking one person, 2 people, 4 people, 6, 2,000. And I was going to ask a similar question, right? Like, what does it, like, have you ever had one person show up at your home, at your office and say, hey, and ask you something with purpose, something that has been researched? What if 2 people showed up? What if 300 people show up? Like, how does that change? A room full of people from different walks of life that come together and have a specific ask, something that they agree on, that have done research, how does that feel? Would it be hard to say no to them? What if you're getting mail from all of them? What if you are getting calls from all of them? How does that change you? And I think that is one of the things that is the most powerful. This idea of having a lot of people come together, it's very powerful, very glamorous, very interesting, right? But the main question that I have about that is how does that happen? Like, how those 600 people, 2,000 people get together? And the answer is with a lot of work, a lot of work. And that's why I had my mask on, but I was smiling full of joy, listening to Jean talk. And one of the things that fills my heart in this organization is the labor that a lot of people put into it. The relational meetings, the one-on-one, the meeting with house meeting, having people come together and just ask them what is something that you care about, like listening, putting that together, communicating, educating, all that work that goes into being able to have 600 people, 2,000 people agree on something. It's a lot of work. But because it's a lot of work, it's also a lot of power. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is that we live issues. We have issues. We see things every single day. In particular, in my home, I can tell you that I have experienced many things. For example, one of the bigger issues that Together West Michigan is doing research and coming close to a very specific way of acting is childcare. I have a little kid, 1 year old, Lucia. She's walking around all over. It's a lot of fun. And but we were trying to get childcare for months and months, and we had we have our naming lists before she was born, and we didn't need childcare until she was like 9 months old. And even with that, we were like, the list, everyone told us, no, maybe next year. And that's like, I don't understand. Like, children are supposed to be the thing that we care the most about, that everyone says, like, children are the future, are the present, etc. And let alone affordable childcare, because that's important too, right? Like, maybe you get your name in the at the right moment, but then how can you afford it, right? Sometimes it doesn't even make financial sense to go back to work because it's more expensive. Happily, we were able to get into a childcare. It was a new place, but I just heard from the people in the childcare that there were other 45 people that were not able to get into the childcare, right? 45 people in the list. And I think that's not acceptable. I think we have to find a way of caring for kids, of caring for parents. So just like that, I share this story because the issues, the things that we are dealing with are the things that we are experiencing, right? So we hear to one another, we listen to one another, and this is where the root of the issues that we care about come from, right? So it's more powerful. It's not an idea. It's an experience. It's something that we are experiencing. So two things that I want to do before I pass it to the next person is, first, going off the theater ideas, Jean talked a lot about what actors do, right? And right now, you are an audience, right? You're sitting down, you're listening to me, you're listening to us. Thank you, by the way. But the things that you're feeling, I don't know, maybe frustration, the joy, whatever you're feeling it looking at me and listening to us and our actions, right? So the first invitation is, what would it take for you to become an actor in this sense, right? Like, how do you stand up, are in your body, and go and do something about these things, about the issues that you care about. The last thing that I wanted to share is I wrote 3 things that I want to invite you, push you, challenge you on. First one is instead of watching the play, instead of being an audience, how can you become an actor? What does it take? You have a lot to contribute. We all do. And I want to be clear, like Together with Michigan is not the only way to do it, right? But this is one that is at your disposal. The second thing is, besides organizing people, we need organized money. And other speakers are going to tell you about the ways that you can also contribute to this, because to do all this, it requires an organizer that catalyzes our relationships, resources, materials, education, training, etc. And the last thing that I want to just shoot out there is that St. Mark's already has approved the budget for the contribution of 2023, the 1%. So as an institution, we are all in. The question for Fountain Street is, are you? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jill Cunningham. I'm a newer member at Fountain Street Church who started attending in March. As we were emerging from the worst of COVID, I was longing for a meaningful connection. The first time I interacted with other members here was a Together West Michigan House meeting, because I was searching for a sense of community engagement and a way to make a difference. I was intrigued by Together West Michigan from the very first exposure. I wondered, how does this community organizing work? Like building relationships in any community, it started with listening. By the way, building is an important principle for Together West Michigan. Javier, Jean, and I dedicated a good part of a weekend to learn about broad-based organizing this fall. We were there together with 8 other Fountain Street folks and a whole gaggle of Together West Michiganders. Something that trainer Siobhan Chapman told us really struck me. She said, don't just fight the power, build the power. We're talking shared power, relational power. So, the many house meetings held across the region were an opportunity to listen to people's stories of concern. After 180 house meetings held by 22-member religious institutions and nonprofits, representatives met to focus in on the most important issues emerging from those house meetings. We gathered together to raise the voices of the many, including those who are often marginalized. We found over and over again people mentioned concerns relating to 6 particular topics: public safety, including a desire to improve police and community relations; housing availability; access to child care; worries about finding support for mental health issues; challenges faced by immigrants and refugees; and finally, the need for better transportation. We formed 6 issue teams that meet regularly and arrange research actions. What are research actions? Well, they are meetings that build understanding and relationships. We are building relationships with community service providers and others who are familiar with the needs of the community, as well as the decision makers who set public policy. Several team members plan questions and attend a research action meeting together. Our teamwork approach always demonstrates we are a network of institutions representing many people. As far as community service providers, for instance, we have met with the Hispanic Center of West Michigan Family Promise, and members of the Cure Violence team. We also have met with several community associations. In terms of decision makers, to name just a few, we have met with city commissioners and Police Chief Eric Winstrom. And later this week, a research action is scheduled with State Senator Winnie Brinks here at Fountain Street Church. I want you to know that there are 15 Fountain Streeters involved in this vital issue team's work. I joined the mental health issue team, and we had research action meetings with major mental health providers in the area like Network 180, Pine Rest Hospital, Forest View Hospital. They all have hardworking staff, but hiring enough people to meet the demand has been hard for them. We have learned that with the current system, it's tough for many to access mental health care before they reach a crisis state. I am inspired by the hours of work undertaken by each issue team. I really have gained a greater understanding of the systemic challenges faced by many in our community. All this research is an effort to determine how our united advocacy can make the most impact for those in West Michigan. We are aware of fellow community members' concerns. When we are aware, we want to respond. Responding effectively calls for shared responsibility. This shared responsibility really is an expression of love for our whole community. By building a network of relationships, we can bring about systemic change and improve lives. We appreciate any support that you can offer. We are interested in knowing more. If you are interested in knowing more about participating in Together West Michigan, perhaps working on an issue team, you are invited to ask any of us how you can do that. And please stay tuned for a big public assembly in March. The more people that show up, the better. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Sharon Radzewski, and I'm a member of the social justice team. You might have noticed we've changed our name. We were the Social Action Team, SAC, now Social Justice, just SJT. We didn't just shuffle a few words, but this is our attempt to reflect our vision, mission, and social climate. We want to diversify and expand our outreach beyond grant giving and to increase our membership. And we'll be asking you more later about possibly joining us to achieve that. My experience with the social justice team goes back maybe 12 or more years. At the time, we were doing Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas gifts delivered by the Fountain Streeters to the individual recipients. We have given grants and continue to give grants. It was paused through COVID, but is continuing. The grant process includes a meeting where applicants describe their organizations and specific needs for the grant money. This was a great learning experience for me in hearing of all the amazing programs of social justice existing right here in Grand Rapids. I realized that hearing from people in the community, apart from FSC, opened my eyes to so many different needs. The house meetings we had last spring that I and many of you participated in again provided an awakening to the commonality of the issues. And then, as mentioned earlier, the social justice team is examining our mission, wondering how to do it better. How do we affect change? The plate collection money has allowed us to support, among many other organizations, our own refugee committee, Family Promise, which houses homeless families. We've helped with food banks, local community projects, many organizations. Sometimes those projects are just Band-Aids for huge and seemingly unsolvable problems. Can we work beyond this? Together West Michigan provides a structure for groups to work for solutions and draws from each member organization, which is comprised of many churches and nonprofits. And many of those are organizations we have given some of our grants to. Local foundations gave generously to help get Together West Michigan up and running. The plan has always been for Fountain Street, as well as other members, to contribute to the budget. In this way, it is our organization, one that supports us. Oops, excuse me, I lost my place. It works on our issues and things we really care about. The member issues decided that each organization's share in dues is 1% of their operating budget. Our share is $6,000. We have a special opportunity because this year is the final year of a matching grant from an anonymous donor. Each dollar that our member organizations contribute this year will be matched. Our $6,000 will become $12,000, but the match ends December 31st. By choosing to support Together West Michigan, we're funding programs that cover many basic needs in the Grand Rapids area. In addition, we're forming close alliances with so many other groups in our community and hearing new perspectives on some old issues. This is one way to enlarge our outreach for social justice. So my plea is, please give what you can in the plate this morning. The entire plate will go toward this fee of $6,000, along with money from the social justice team. And one last thing, I really ask you if you will support this. We support this as really good social justice work. And just before I close, out in the narthex, there'll be brochures that can tell you quite a bit about Together West Michigan. You might want to pick one up and read it. And I thank you. Thank you for your donations in the past. And really, thank you for everything you give us this morning.
Thank you, everyone. I say something that sounds like I'm being too candid, but I'm not. That's a lot. That was a lot, because it is a lot. We are talking constantly and continuously here at Fountain Street about how we are trying to participate in turning the world in a different direction. This is an idea that goes way back through the wisdom traditions across the world, throughout the religious holidays we lift up in this community. We are trying to turn the world back in a direction towards more love and justice and equity and inclusion. And so that is the work of Together West Michigan, and that is the work of Fountain Street Church. And so in a moment, we are going to be taking an offering, and to clarify, the social justice team, as they are, will be contributing of the $6,000, $3,000. So they have generously offered to contribute up to $3,000 from the money that we have raised in the social action plate week after week. And so we are grateful for some of their generosity in paying it forward and back into the community. So in the spirit of generosity, in the spirit of one becoming many, in the spirit of all of these things you've heard this morning, the offering will now most graciously be received.
Anyone can whistle, that's what they say, easy. Anyone can whistle, any all day, easy. It's all so simple, relax, let go and fly. So someone tell me, why can't I can dance a tango, I can read Greek, easy. I can slay a dragon any old week, easy. What's hard is simple, what's natural comes hard. Maybe if you show me how to let go, lower my guard, learn to be free. Maybe if you whistle, whistle for me. What's hard is simple, what's natural comes hard. Maybe if you show me how to let go, lower my guard, learn to be free. Maybe if you whistle, whistle for me.
We have a lot going on here right now. Between our work in Together West Michigan and many of the events happening today and next week and beyond, there are a few things we want to draw to your attention this morning, but the first of which is a very brief introduction to a new staff member, as well as a very brief appeal that she has for all of us in the form of what happens in our ministries upstairs. So I would like to introduce to many of you for the first time, and sometimes the last if you don't make it to the second floor, Katie Bush, who is our interim children and youth director. Please welcome and say hello to Katie.
Good morning. Good afternoon. It's good to be with you today. I am new to this role here at Fountain Street, but I come to you with quite a bit of experience in education and also in my distant past in summer camp work. I would like to make a request of you today. We have some excellent paid staff as well as volunteers who help make our children's programs happen. But as happened this morning, and sometimes happens, we have a teacher who falls ill or some other reason that we might need a substitute to make our programs all they need to be. So I would encourage you to consider if that is a role you would be willing to fill. There are a few QR codes that you can scan with your phone around where you entered the sanctuary today, and it's just a quick form to fill out to give me your information to let me know that that's something you might be interested in helping with. So if you would consider that, that would be great. I look forward to meeting you all. Thank you for having me.
God bless Katie. I told her she came up, it's got to be real fast today. So she did a lot of editing. Thank you. All right, my friends, we have a whole host of wonderful things going on here at Fountain Street Church, and I just want to make a warm invitation for each of them. I will try not to take up too much time to do so, so always consult your Friday Flash. If you don't get the Friday Flash electronically, you can always pick up copies of it out in the narthex or in the lobby. It feels good to become weary of all the things going on as you're trying to scroll through every week. What a good feeling that is. A few things you'll notice as you depart. We have some folks that will be handing out bags for the annual Westminster Food Pantry Drive. I see some people already have them, so you can pick those up in the narthex and you can bring them right back, hopefully, with some non-perishable items next Sunday, which is also going to coincide with our own Gratitude Sunday. So the Westminster Food Pantry Drive, many of us are familiar with it. Please give generously as you are able. Another warm invitation, immediately after this service, you are welcome to go to the social hall, and in the social hall there will be a very appropriate sized glass of champagne, Prosecco, or Brut for you, for those who want, or a non-alcoholic option that is courtesy of the Choice Fund, in celebration and in affirmation of Proposal 3 passing. This is a deeply important ministry of this church. Yeah. Can we get an amen? That is something that really affects the ministries of this church greatly, and we were prepared to pivot in any way necessary, but this was the best outcome we could have possibly hoped for. And so come support the Choice Fund's effort and that they've always offered, and join us for a toast of whatever beverage is appropriate for you and your family. We also have a biblical study going on in room 108 after that at 12:30, and we're going to be looking at a very familiar passage from Corinthians, but I like to say biblical study instead of Bible study, because Bible study just has this connotation of, well, we just pick it up, read it at face value. How do I feel about it? This is more of an actual biblical, historical, getting into it. Ed Smith is here, and he will be leading that. He is a wonderful and interesting and insightful person, so I hope you'll make it to that. Unfortunately, we have a lot going on at 12:30, so also you are invited to the chapel at 12:30 as well. The Social Justice Film Series continues today with the film Loving. That will be in the chapel at 12:30 as well. You've heard the invitation already, but if you haven't yet, please sign up for dinner and a workshop tomorrow at 6 p.m. or just a workshop at 6:30 online if that's your preference. You can get a link to that or speak with one of the staff today or tomorrow. We would love to see as many of you there as possible. It's a beautiful part of the storytelling we're doing with one another here in the church and imagining our future together beyond this year. Oh my goodness, y'all. What else? We have these beautiful flowers here. These are in memory of Pat Huber. We will be celebrating and lifting up her life after the service at 12:30. So after you've made your way to the champagne toast, you are invited to go to the Keeler, where we'll have a small reception in honor of Pat and her life, and just a small reception. And so stop by if that's something that would bring meaning to you, or you'd like to support that effort for those who knew her well and that she knew best. Additionally, on that note, my sequence is already out of order. There are a group of people who would like to sing the Lutkin benediction in the tower after worship. On your way to the social hall, before the champagne, but after the postlude, you may gather in the tower for a moment of just holding space in honor of Pat and singing that beautiful Lutkin. Even if you don't know it and you just want to hold that space, please join us there. So that will be as soon as the postlude is done. You may join in the tower room for that. Then get your glass of champagne. Then either go to her reception, or go to a biblical study, or go to a film justice piece, or go to the Build Guild annual meeting. Friends, it is good to be busy. Amen? This is what we've been waiting for. And finally, in case today wasn't weird and kooky enough, I do hope you'll come next week. It's my favorite Sunday. It's the Sunday before Thanksgiving. Problematic history and all. I love this opportunity to look at the last year, think of those tiny invisible miracles and those moments of gratitude we have with one another, and just celebrate how good it is to be grateful and lift all of that up together. So that will be next week at the 11 o'clock. Ed Clifford and a jazz ensemble will be here. Jonathan Took, thank the Lord, will be here on organ. It's going to be beautiful, followed by an annual meeting, which I strangely enjoy, followed by Quiche Be With You, a fundraiser to help raise money for a refrigerator. Thank you, Women's Association. And if you don't remember any of this, check your Friday Flash. So, it is good to be busy, and it is even better to be with all of you. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you to Together West Michigan for bringing what I know was a lot of information to our pulpit. Thank you, each of you. Thank you to our choir for bringing energy and charisma. Thank you so much to Margie and Austin. Thank you to Rob and Connell. Thank you to our tech staff. Thank you to Melissa, Jamie, oh my gosh, Lori, Katie, everybody who keeps this place going. We appreciate all of you, but most importantly, thank you to you who keep us on our toes and going forward. Friends, go in peace, go in love, go realizing that you do have the power to turn the world in a different direction if you'll just lean on one another to do so. Go in peace. Have a good week.